My name is Jeremy Kalashenko. I'm the owner, creative director, and head designer of Progressive Bungalow. We are a bespoke boutique design build firm here in Toronto. We specialize in the renovation and construction and project management of essentially, I guess, bungalows and small, bespoke, very cool, curated, individual and independent spaces. We basically we don't just focus on residential. We focus on commercial. We focus on gallery spaces. We focus on essentially any spaces where the public has an interest in gathering. Again, these are very individualistic spaces, not designed for the every person, but designed for those who have a unique look at life, a desire to live life a little differently, a desire to think outside the box, and a desire to basically want to live or work in a space as individual as their individual lives allow them to be. My design philosophy, I guess we can start at the very beginning. In addition to the company that we're discussing right now, I own and operate a structural engineering firm. I've been in the game now for about 25 years, and I've been in every facet of design, from concept and design development all the way to project certification. It's allowed me to dip my toes into very, very different spaces in the commercial realm, in the industrial realm, in the institutional realm, multi-story, high-rise stuff. My philosophy is born out of a desire to find spaces that allow us to live and breathe as individual people. Unique spaces that one may look at and say, I can't possibly believe how someone could want to live in a space like that. But again, everybody's different. And the philosophy is literally predicated on experiences that I've had. I've walked into unfinished buildings before and thought to myself, wow, I mean, this is definitely, I could live this way. You know, when there's just exposed polished concrete and drywall and, unfinished tenant spaces or unfinished residential spaces, I found myself often thinking, I would love to live this way. I would love to outfit this space exactly the way I would want to do it, with, everything from various artwork or toys or video games or things that have really influenced and impacted the way I like to live my life. I believe these things matter. I believe pop culture. I believe the things we love can help define us and can help define a path for us. And again, it allows us to establish a unique way of living, a way of living that enables us to really embrace our own individuality. I believe in customized spaces. I believe that if in 2021 you can custom design a pair of Nike Air Max on their website, or you can choose to buy a Mini Cooper with, 12 different roof colors or treatments of their exterior mirrors, then you should definitely be able to live the way you want in your own space. It's also born out of the times that we're in, the times that we've been in over the last decade, maybe two. Market forces, real estate market forces have kind of dictated that these days, if you're going out and spending your last dollar on a house, because maybe you've been outbid on multiple houses before, or maybe you've found something that you really loved but you couldn't afford. I believe that what we do at Progressive Bungalow allows you to not have to have dropped your entire nest egg in a space that doesn't feel like it's your space, that doesn't feel like it represents you individually, that doesn't represent your family or your core values or your core design values. What we do is we give you that individuality back. We let you tweak and search and comb the earth for the things that you love, and we allow those to be representations of your own home and your own living space. And we really do believe that you can live individually. You can live the way that you want, uniquely, and we believe that your home should be the ultimate representation of who you are. It shouldn't matter that you've literally spent your last dollar on everything from land transfer tax to your moving expenses. We can transform your home into the space that really makes you feel like your home, really makes you feel that your living place, your conditions are an embodiment of who you are, that they truly encapsulate you, that they truly make you feel as though, this space here is an embodiment of me. That when your friends and your family come and visit you, they look at your walls, they look at your ceiling, they look at all of the different bits and pieces, and they say, oh my goodness, I feel like I've just walked into your mind. I feel like I've just walked into your soul. And that's what we want to do. That's what we at Progressive Bungalow do. We strive to give you that individuality in your everyday space. Because let's face it, you spend more time at home, especially during this pandemic era, than you do anywhere else. Your home, the space that you live in should again, it should be a representation, the ultimate representation of who you are and what your dreams are and where you've been and where you want to go. So this field, I guess, found me more than I found it. Again, I lean on my decades of experience running a structural engineering firm. And I felt very, very early on that I was almost, miscast as a member of the construction industry, an industry that I love very, very much. But in my field, in engineering, I don't think that I certainly don't want to be throwing my peers under the bus, but I don't think that they would find anything wrong with me saying that, I'm not a scientist, I'm a creative, and I've always leaned that way. And unfortunately, in my day-to-day, my 9 to 5, if you will, engineering didn't really give me the platform in which I could express myself. Didn't give me the platform that I felt happy and fulfilled and wanted to go out there. I would sit through design meetings, I would sit through coordination meetings, and I would often gravitate towards the architects and the way they operated and their vision for a space, the way it felt, the way it breathed, the way the sunlight hit it at the exact hour of the day to make it feel alive. For me, the way humans interact with the space that they live in, that's what drove me. That's what really moved me. And it became abundantly clear to me, especially within the last 5-6 years when I started my own projects without the umbrella of Progressive Bungalow, if you will, that if I could have done it all over again, I would have gone to architecture school. I'm now enrolled just so I can speak the language in various interior design courses. It's something that I want to bring to my client base. It's something that I want to, it's a value-added service, but again, it just helps, it helps inform me, and it helps inform my decisions, and it helps me to really be able to see and understand exactly what it is that we're looking for, that we want to look for, that we want to strive for in our creative endeavors, in our ability to, again, design spaces to meet the individual needs of the people that are buying them. engineering just wasn't cutting it for me. And I found myself, especially through my first project, which was the 84 Carmichael, which was a renovation of a tiny 700 square foot bungalow. It was an L-shaped bungalow that I ended up topping off, adding a rear addition to and squaring it off. It turned into a cube, if you will, which again, I guess based on my experience running a structural engineering firm, I did consciously because I knew it could be the most manipulatable form that whenever the next person were to buy it from me and take it over, that they would have, basically the clay in which to operate and mold that space into their own space, which again is something I'm very, very proud of when I see the spaces that I've lived in once before become transformed to fit the needs of the next person that moves in. I found myself at 5 a.m. sometimes not being able to sleep because all I wanted to do was source. I wanted to source cabinetry. I wanted to source countertops. I wanted to source baseboard. I wanted to source anything and everything. All I could think about was design. All I could think about was the next thing. All I could think about was building a space that, again, catered to my needs, but I could also forecast, 5-10 years down the road and say, wow, this space is still relevant. This space still works. I have a very unique approach. I like to design seamlessly. I don't like things like tiles or spaces in my floor. A lot of my floors and a lot of the things that I've sourced, a lot of the materials I use are concrete, lightweight concrete in all of my homes. They're topped with epoxy. They're exceptionally easy to maintain. They're exceptionally easy to clean. But again, this comes back to working in an engineering firm. We are, if anything, concrete and steel and wood. We are those materials. Those are our Bible, if you will. Those are our tools. And a lot of that has impacted my design philosophy. A lot of the fundamentals I've learned from being in the structural engineering field has really impacted, what I like to use as a designer. But again, fundamentally, I realized that in order for me to really spread my wings, in order for me to be happy, in order for me to maintain a foothold in the industry and all the contacts I'd made in so many years of doing it, that I really needed to get into a more creative field. And Progressive Bungalow is my canvas. It's allowed me to paint. It's allowed me to really spread my wings, and I couldn't be more grateful for the opportunities that I've had in the past and the opportunities that keep getting presented to me moving forward. I am grateful to have traveled the world. I think at 43 years old, there's maybe 1 or 2 places left on my bucket list that I have yet to go to. Obviously, the last 15, 16 months has put a wrench in a lot of plans that I had to see the world. Clearly, I will continue to. But every space I design, whether it's for me or whether it's for the people that have bought into a vision, albeit a very unique vision, because my spaces are unique. Every place I've ever been has informed and imprinted and left an undeniable influence and impact on the way I love to design space, whether it was an art gallery in Barcelona that was heavy with neon and white walls and white floors, whether it was those commercial spaces that I had visited and done inspection reports while working as in a structural engineering firm, whether it was the family vacation I took at 4 years old, or whether it was the very first loft I ever lived in. All of these elements tend to influence my design, life, everything, every step I've ever taken, every person I've ever known, every great love of my life. Everything that I've ever done and seen and tasted and felt inevitably ends up being carved into the DNA of all of the places that I've ever lived in or have designed for others. I can't separate my experiences in life from the way in which I want to live my life. And thus I can't separate that from what propels me as a designer and the vision that I have. So touching a little bit upon travel, which is something I've always loved to do. I am a self-described design junkie. I'm proud of being one. In addition to being a design junkie, I am a big fan of boutique hotels and spaces, again, that are very, very unique. In the last 20 years, I think we've seen the rise of really, really cool, unique hotel spaces. We've gone away from that kind of, Holiday Inn, Best Western model, though I've stayed at some great Best Westerns and some great Holiday Inns, so I'm certainly don't mean to knock the brands here. But it's those boutique spaces. It's whether I was in Austin, Texas at the St. Cecilia, or, a city like Montreal, which somehow has more boutique hotels per capita than any other space on the planet. What I've always loved is their individuality, and their individuality in a lot of ways had been, there was a symbiotic relationship between the way that these spaces were branded and, again, the way they represent themselves. I can't really speak to where it starts and where it stops. I don't know if it's the branding that led to the individuality of the space or the individuality of the space led to the branding. But every single space I've ever done, I've kind of treated as a boutique hotel. 84 Carmichael, I branded as the 84. I lived in a loft at Broadview and Queen. It was the Broadview Lofts, and that was the 202. I mean, I go to the point where I'm printing, I'm getting logos done for these places. I'm getting rugs printed with those logos. Sometimes dishware, flatware, silverware is imprinted with these things. Again, for me, it's important to have that element to a home or to a space because, again, it separates it from everywhere else. Branding my spaces to me is, I can't possibly separate a cookie cutter space, or to me, it's the only way to separate it. It's as important as the last name I was given. It's important to forge that individuality with a space. And I know it may sound crazy because at the end of the day, a lot of people think, well, when I'm living at home, I don't want to be in a hotel. I don't want that feel, but there's a lot of people that do. I mean, I do. And I know a lot of my clients do as well. Getting back to the things that have always influenced me a lot, I fell in love with shipping container design going back about 10 years ago. So I was tasked with designing an art gallery in the Design District area of Toronto about 5 or 6 years ago. And in its first iteration, we had 8,000 square feet of space. In the historic Hilroy building, which is, I believe, a heritage building, if I'm not mistaken, if it's been designated as one. But Hilroy is that company that manufactures binders and pencils, and so their home base. And again, I'm also a junkie for old industrial buildings, lofts. I've been in love with since I can remember. I mean, in our structural engineering business, we were tasked with renovating and doing some of the very first pure renovation jobs to loft conversion spaces in Toronto. And so when I had the opportunity to to basically be tasked with not just designing and fitting out and building up a space, but finding a space. I knew very well that the best place to do this, understanding, of course, that areas like Queen Street West were beginning to be gentrified, where the existing gallery spaces were at the time were now being replaced by high-rise condominiums. I'm guilty of having designed, 5 or 6 of them, replacing like what were vintage, iconic, important Toronto gallery spaces. But getting back to the space, I really wanted to think outside the box with that gallery space. And so we had 8,000 square feet. And the artist had partners in the entertainment business, had partners in all sorts of businesses, and they wanted to merge and they wanted to be under one roof. So I thought to myself, instead of designing, your typical drywall partition spaces, your typical office spaces, for me, I really, really used it as an opportunity to say, you know what, let's get some containers in there. Let everybody that wants an office space, let's retrofit containers and throw them in there. I think the Hilroy building has something insane, like 30-foot ceilings, at least in the space we were looking at originally. And containers were, to me, they hadn't really attacked the market yet. And so they were still relatively inexpensive. And again, they would look super, super cool. It didn't come to fruition. Unfortunately, we ended up taking a different space in there, 1,800 square foot space, which again is a super, super cool space, but the artist was going to be alone there. And I had just always wanted to design with containers or being influenced by containers. 3 Casino is certainly, I guess, the evolution of that desire, of that want. When I moved in here, again, I wanted it to look like the art galleries that I'd seen, while traveling abroad. I wanted it to be wide open. I wanted it to be wide open space, which I certainly accomplished. And in an area that, is famous for post-World War II bungalows and not really overly individualistic spaces, I wanted to stick out, as I often do, as somebody that likes to march to the beat of their own drum. So I commissioned Giant Shipping Containers, which is a company here located in Canada, which I understand has just opened some really cool offices in Miami as well. I have good relations with them. And I knew very well that I wanted to throw a shipping container door on my bungalow. I wanted to wrap it with corrugated steel, which again, you tend to see in a lot of container oriented design builds. I mean, to this day, I will look outside quite often and there's people just kind of staring into my bungalow in awe. When I get deliveries, people are like, oh my God, your door is just so incredible. Again, this space to me is the evolution of my entire life. It's the culmination of everywhere I've been, and it's the culmination of everywhere I'd like to go. And moreover, it's again influenced by the things I love. Containers are certainly one such thing. My next couple projects, I would absolutely love nothing more than to just build pure containers. The next 10 years, I would very much like to be focused specifically on the growth and the progress of Progressive Bungalow. Again, I've made enough partners in the industry. I have a bevy of architects that I can lean on. I have a bevy of designers in every field, whether it's ground up construction, starting from scratch, or whether it's renovating, or whether it's ground up construction with modular, which shipping containers tend to, I guess, fall in that category, though. Again, I think they've been miscast in that role, but let's just call them, for the sake of this conversation, modular, prefab kind of spaces. I believe that the world is trending in that way. I believe the various elements like sustainability, which I'm a huge fan of. I'm a big fan of our planet. I'm a big fan of green living. I'm a big fan of the environment. If we can eliminate and reuse and repurpose, then we're all better for it. Again, that's part of my core philosophy. I think that's when I speak about progress and when I speak about being progressive, I can't separate those facts from each other. And I genuinely believe that, whereas today, I don't remember what the stats are, but I can't imagine that modular and prefab account for more than 10, 15%. Of all the builds that are happening now, I believe that trend is going to start trending upwards. I myself was looking at some spaces in the last couple months, be it in Prince Edward County or be it in cottage country in the Muskokas. And there are some absolutely beautiful lots that are primed and ready for that kind of build. That's how I'd like to approach things. That's how I'd like to do. That's how I'd like to be. That being said, I'm still a massive believer in our core philosophy, which is renovating, which is taking what's existing now, because again, there's clearly a massive element of sustainability when we're talking about that as well. So if you ask me, in a perfect world, I'm doing 10 projects a year, and maybe 5 of them are the renovation of existing spaces, maybe not even a bungalow, maybe, an existing 2-story home, but again, one that wants to use my vision, one that has that kind of unique individual that wants to live differently, to think differently, borrowing a phrase from Steve Jobs and Apple, and again, people that influenced me tremendously. But the other 50%, I'd very much like to be focused on that modular prefab container-esque kind of construction. It's something I believe tremendously in. I absolutely love the aesthetic. It's so consistent with who I am. It's so consistent with Progressive Bungalow's brand. Nothing would make me happier than driving out to places that are more traditional, more, tend to be more country-esque, and seeing those builds. I mean, we're already seeing it. When I'm going to do site inspections all over Ontario, I'm already starting to see these brilliant red brick Victorian homes with like silver corrugated steel additions, all glass. It just does it for me. It just absolutely does it for me. I really want to impart that in 2021, the world has changed. And I believe there's hordes of people now that, as I said before, march to the beat of their own drum. I believe that the digital world has enabled us to have so much access to information, and as such has really visual world now, more so than ever before. And again, that's been ushered in by the digital age. And as such, the imagery, the ability to really, like I said earlier, source, allows you to define your individuality. I used to get on an airplane in the 1950s, though clearly I was not around in the 1950s, but like everyone's dressed in suits and everyone looks the same and there's a uniformity, and that's a beautiful thing also. And I do believe in a lot of ways that there will be fashion trends that take us back there. But for now, what I see is 100 people looking completely different, with completely different stories, with completely different paths and completely different desires, completely different pasts, and inevitably completely different futures. Up till now, we've only really had the ability to define our individuality in choices we make, and the way we dress, and the things we like to eat, and the way in which we like to interact. And you look at some of the most unique people I know. They're literally living in cookie cutter places that I can't possibly imagine, that they're not befitting of them at all. I think it's such a shame. I really want people to be able to furnish their spaces, and not just with artwork and vinyl and signs and accoutrement, if you will. I want them to be able to build it to suit the way they want to live. I want people to progress, and Progressive Bungalow can help everybody out with that. And that's my goal, and that's my dream. And I won't stop until everybody has a Progressive Bungalow.